welcome to this video. So it is finally the day. So we have
What? It is I, Prince Charming. Did you get born in a barn or something? Close the goddamn door! Oh, my bad. Thank you.
It is I, Lord Farquaad, here to send you a message to you.
Obviously, we've seen the front cover. It's glorious.
My
Great.
wig.
Love it. You know.
I'm sorry. Is there a part of me that has to give a damn about whether or not I care? Can't you see I'm in the middle or something?
I wouldn't ignore you if I were you, because if I had my blade, I would slay you down right now. Mr. E sent me, and I don't need a knife to send a message. Oh shit, is that a gun?
Didn't really think this through, did you?
Hang on a second, I'm just the messenger here. You wouldn't hit a nice blonde ninja, would you?
There's two things in the world I hate.
I can go back to Mr. E.
Ninjas.
Tell him you're not wanted. I say I vanquished you.
And return to
never
fucking
speak
Zombie
this
Island.
again.
Now that's taken care of. Let's continue with the video.
Boss, you'll think this is the end of me. I will have my revenge. Oh God, my nudity!
Right, so now that we've done with the video, it's time to get on to the main topic of today's video, and that is the review. And no, I am not reviewing Return to Zombie Island, because I just shot the last guy who tried to make that proposal. And Mr. E, if you're watching this, stop sending your henchmen round to do your dirty work. Clearly they're useless, okay? That one didn't even do anything, and he still died, sort of. So anyhow, I'm going to ignore that and go straight on to today's video topic, and that is my review on Scooby-Doo and the Backstage Rage. Now let's make it confusing, so I'm going to try to explain it as straightforward as I can. The Backstage Rage is a classic episode from the original Scooby-Doo show, Where Are You?, that aired back in 1969. It featured a gang on a trail of missing money when Shaggy discovers it in a violin case. This leads the gang to an abandoned theatre where they start to investigate it and discover the theatre is haunted by the Puppet Master. In the end, it turns out to be a huge counterfeit operation orchestrated by Pietro himself disguised as the Puppet Master. While also titled The Backstage Rage, the fan film is completely different on its own league, set in its own original timeline that retells the events of the episode with a new continuation storyline, or keeping it short, a reboot if you will, set in its own universe within the Scoob-verse. The Scoob-verse is the name that I came up with to explain the different timelines in Scooby-Doo history. Throughout all the series that we have seen, not many of them line up all together because the timeline for them is either altered or different or canon, whichever way you look at it. So I came up with the theory of the Scoob-verse, or the multiverse theory. And within this whole set of timeline comes different type of series. So we have the Where Are You series, but then in another alternate universe, there's a new Scooby-Doo show. And in another one, there's the Mystery Incorporated. So within these ones, they have different types of continuation storylines, different type of movie elements, and it gets really hard to dictate where they all line up with the gang's age, because it doesn't make any clearer indication of how old they are. Us watching them, we would probably think that they're in their 30s or 40s, but in fact they're still teenagers going on to adults. Now, while this may retell the events from the episode, it is not the main focus point for the film. Like I said, it has its own original timeline to deal with. So think of the events from the episode like icing on the cake. We all like it, but it's only the first layer. By the way, and you start to see the whole reality of what this universe is like. Now, I should probably mention now, before we proceed forward, that the tone that this film is set is basically the old classic dark tone that we knew from Scooby-Doo back in the day. That rich vibe soundtrack, more gruesome, you know, more horror that Zombie Island had, which was 13 Ghosts Scooby-Doo had, Ghoul School had, and that sort of thing, but more advanced. And by that I mean there's going to be blood. There's going to be murder, there's going to be death, there's going to be all that chaos blended in. So this is the darkest universe of Scooby-Doo, where stuff like this happens, and it's totally normal. Now, in the original classic Scooby-Doo Where Are You?, we had our fair share of creepy elements when it came to our bag of horrors, from creepy build-up music to the screeching spooks that lurk in the night. To summarise Jordan's masterpiece, I would probably call it a bloodbath of horrors, because that's what it is. Anything less would be an insult. Calling it dark tone would be an insult. A bloodbath is what it is. The amount of depth and the level of depth that went into this is a truly new way that we could see Scooby-Doo in the future if they ever went down this route. The only thing that I could probably think of that comes close to this masterpiece is the comic book series Scooby Apocalypse, where that had zombies, the undead, and had bloodbath all over. So that universe is in a way similar to this universe, just without the zombies. Think about that. So now I warmed you up to this film, let's take a deep dive and look at each of the characters and the villains and see where we're at inside this timeline. It's going to get really gruesome and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Now this film is part of an ongoing saga series, and that saga is called The Meddling Kids. Each new movie installment will at least focus around one member of the gang. This one, being the first one, titled The Backstage Rage, is more into Shaggy's origin stories while also incorporating the episode and exploring the depths of what the episode could mean in an alternate timeline. We get to see his backstory, his future connections with Scooby-Doo, his love twist and that sort of thing. Most of the time these will be shown in flashbacks, which is something we never see as much from the original show. It's sort of like how the Scoob movie introduced Shaggy and Scooby's origin stories and how they first met, and the focus on the troubles of the relationship and the heart-heart bond. But keep in mind, this movie did come out first in 2018, where Scoob was released in 2020. Another show that focused on character development and relationships was Mystery Incorporated, that aired in 2010. From that we get a better look into Velma's feelings towards Shaggy Rogers and how Scooby-Doo became a third wheel, resulting in some issues that do happen in real life. From that we get to see an insight into how the relationship between Shaggy and Fawn will play out, and how it all ties in the mystery solving and the close friendship between him and Scooby-Doo. So that just gives you a small taste of what's to come. I don't want to spoil too much because at the end of the day this is a fan film. I don't want to ruin it all and ruin the surprise when you watch the movie. No. So I'm only going to tell you a bit about it, but also save the juicy stuff for later when you sit down and watch it. Now we have discussed about Shaggy's role, what will be happening, let's move on to the story plot, because this is where everything gets interesting, as you would originally thought it would have played out like the episode, but the episode is only a mile of filler into the movie itself, where it actually expands into a whole new set. Now, as we all know, this film has its own origin story timeline that retells the event from the episode. While it's nice seeing the episode portrayed in this, it must also be noted that there is a much bigger mystery at hand, and this is only the beginning. While the gang is investigating the counterfeit money operation, a series of mystery disappearances start to happen around Crystal Cove. This leads the gang to suspect that the two mysteries are connected in some way, leading them down a rabbit hole into the world of trouble, coming at the other side completely different people. I should mention that the gang is not alone, they are accompanied by another group, the Hex Girls. Since in this universe, the Hex Girls are from the same town and part of the same school as the Mystery Inc. gang. This also explains Shaggy's long-term relationship with Fawn from his childhood and why they would be tagging along with the gang on mysteries now and then. So while accompanied by the Hex Girls, the team head off to solve the twisted conspiracy that they have walked into. Now, the conspiracies don't just tie in with the strange and mysterious disappearances around town, but also has ties to the 100-year-old puppet Phantom and all of his mischief minions. So it's a bit like a cult, because if you think about it, they've been around for centuries, 100 years, they lurk in the shadows, waiting for the time is right to strike. It's a cult. So seeing how the gang does this on a regular basis, it'd be very interesting to see how it all plays out, considering that they have their personal lives, school, relationships, all thrown into the mix. Yeah, okay, Mystery Incorporated did it as well, but we're in the FarrellVerse, and, death round here is death. It's not just, I want some insurance fraud details to get, my debt off my back. No, there's actually going to be some killings and all that. So, yeah, thrown into that mix of how to cope with that, this could be very interesting to see how they deal with that emotionally and physically. The whole point of the villain is that they come at the right moment. They take you by surprise. They're spontaneous. They're vicious. They're cunning, they're cruel, and most of the time you're never going to see them on screen until the very end. Sometimes they have lackeys or minions to do their dirty work. Other times they're used, in this instance, a puppet just to try to fool you. And then when you unmask them at the end, we get to see who the villain is under the mask. However, this movie takes a massive big turnout, because we know that in the episode Mr. Pietro is the puppet master. He is the villain. But in this movie, he's only part of the plan. He's only part of the puzzle. Just like the planet-spheric disc from Mystery Incorporated, Mr. Pietro is just a small piece in an undercover conspiracy of a much more sinister plot. Whereas this movie focuses on more folklore and more legends and more myths, down to the whole origins of the puppet master, whereas Mr. Pietro uses that story for his own gain, to counterfeit money. The counterfeit money isn't the main issue of this movie, it's just something that Mr. Pietro wants. It's something that we all believe that he took the persona on to get that money. But instead, he's using the legend that is actually real for his own gain. It isn't until later on that we see that the legend is real and that the plot is thickened, and it becomes much worse. So the villains of the entire movie are much more sinister, much more mental than you would originally thought. Because as we already guessed upon, there is going to be death, there is going to be gore, there is going to be like that level of intense dark tone to it, because this is set in a dark universe. Because that's what the FarrellVerse is, a whole dark tone to Scooby-Doo where everything's real, legends, myths, murder, you name it, it's all mashed into one. Now let's start with the original puppet master, the one Mr. Pietro based his whole costume on. Now this is meant to be a creature that no one's ever seen, that likes to devour souls and is bloodthirsty, meaning that he will kill if needed. He is not afraid to kill. He will devour anyone, and he's like a collector of souls. So that's the legend that Mr. Pietro used to base this whole costume and this whole plot on. Blame it on the ghost, ride out into the sunset. It does sound like a good plan, but it never works, especially with Mystery Incorporated. So I feel like they're only just getting a taste of what realism is. They solve mysteries, yeah, it may be fun, but now the game has changed and it's serious when the killer's on the loose. And there is some speculation, like I've had a debate with people, that even though a soul's of the host body, if the host body is not dead, then it's not technically murder until the host body has perished. So sometimes he steals souls from hosts, but until the host is completely depleted, whether it's due to old age or just straight up dead old in total, then it's straight up murder. And when you think about the soul, it's sort of like free will. You have to be willingly to give it up. If you're not going to willingly give it up, then they can't take your soul. So you pretty much have to bargain it. Think of it as a chip. You place a bet down, and when you lose, they have to take that chip away from you. And that's what you got to do with your soul. You have to pretty much bet it on the line. So I'm guessing the puppet master has the same ploy where you have to make a bargain, pretty much a deal with the devil. And what bigger bargaining chip is there is betting on the one thing that God gave you, free will. And The Simpsons did this in an episode of Season 7, Episode 4, titled Bart Sells His Soul, where Bart sells his soul to Milhouse, and then throughout the entire episode, like, Bart's just become this figure of that can't do anything. When he goes to the Quickie Mart, he can't open the automatic doors, because for some reason the sensors see him as a soulless body, not really there. And when you try to make concentration on the glass, try and make it all foggy effect, and then try and write on it, he can't do that because he has no soul. Then he tries to get it back from Milhouse, but Milhouse already sold it on, and it's been sold on and on and on. The end of the episode, Lisa has the soul, and Bart pretty much eats the soul to get back his soul. So it's written on a piece of paper, and he eats the piece of paper, and that's his soul entering back his body. So it does explain all the disappearances around Crystal Cove, with the whole souls leaving the body, bodies being murdered to acquire the soul, that type of thing. If you can't bargain with someone, you're going to straight up kill him anyway. And you got to really take into consideration, like, what if you don't want to bargain your chip? What if there's nothing that this guy can offer you? If you kill the host, like straight up murder him, his soul's going to leave his body anyway, and that pretty much gives you the right to take it, because is all for grabs, and until it's reclaimed, or whether it's going to heaven or hell, it's on the table. So that's another way of acquiring a soul, if the puppet master needs to. And that pretty much relates to most of all the disappearances in Crystal Cove. Some can be saved, but others may be lost forever. The first Scooby-Doo movie, the live action one, where all their souls get taken from their body and get put into this cauldron and then get replaced with like monster souls. It's like that, basically. This guy is pretty much ripping off the first Scooby-Doo movie. They're taking everyone's souls. I think the more time passes, some souls may not be able to go back to their original body, but they can enter other people's bodies if that head doesn't have a soul in them. So there's still that kind of thing we could take into consideration. Whether or not we don't want to indulge into that, there's still the possibility where you can still reclaim another body until you want to pass on. Now, besides the Puppet Master and Pietro, there are also other villains like Johnny the Puppet and Mixie. Yeah, that's right, these two are just as bad, if not worse. You think of Mr. Pietro as just this innocent old guy who wanted to get rich, and the Puppet Master is just this ancient legend that just wants to devour everyone. These two are the perfect ways of acquiring those souls to the Puppet Master. They will straight up kill you. So we got Johnny, who is a psychotic puppet, who is hell-bent on killing anyone. He isn't good, he has nothing to redeem, he's cold to the core, he has no heart. He is menacing. Mixie, however, is a different story. Mixie is not a puppet. Mixie is kind of like an enigma. He's a creature of unknown origin. Think of Frankenstein's monster, and that's what Mixie is. Pretty much leftover human part, like sewed together and then brought to life. Disfiguration of God's creation, that is what Mixie is. Doesn't have a heart, doesn't have any care whatsoever. You cannot reason with Mixie because it doesn't know right from wrong. All it knows is destruction. It has no, without the heart, it cannot actually feel anything, so it's not going to show no remorse or nothing. If you think about it, I would rather be with Johnny the Puppet or the Puppet Master than be stuck with Mix. And I really love the design of Mixie. If you've ever been a fan of Medieval, the video game, you might want to call Sir Daniel Fortescue, because he would really want to have a few words with Mixie since he's already taken him down once. So you could say Mixie is the true main villain of the story, but it's not. He's just like Johnny the Puppet. Someone's pulling his strings. And that guy, whoever he is lurking in the shadows. So besides the villains, who else makes an appearance in this show? Now we know there's going to be a lot of recurring characters, some new, some old, some we wouldn't even think of knowing. We already know the basics, so we're not going to cover the Mystery Inc. gang, we're not going to cover the ones that were previously leaked, we're not going to indulge into the ones that we know for the other shows. Instead, we're going to look at the ones that only make a short appearance but also have more character development, stuff from other shows that we wish that were more worked on, like in Mystery Incorporated, where they had the whole family interactions and their own little chemistries. This movie evolves on that, and one of those is Mr. and Mrs. Knight, which is obviously Fawn Knight's parents. Now we saw the dad in Witcher's Ghost, and we never really saw the mother, and in Witcher's Ghost he was technically a bad guy, not a bad guy, but he did a one thing to help the mayor boost the attractions in town by being a fake witch just to draw in the tourists for the town. But we never really saw much more about him. We never heard of him again. He only had a small role. So to see him back in this film is astonishing. And we're also going to be seeing Fawn's parents. Now, from Witcher's Ghost, we rarely knew anything about them. We don't know if they're protective. We don't know what their hobbies are, but what we do know in this film, they are way too much protective on Fawn, so we have no idea where the base set in their previous incarnations of them on the gang, because we've never seen them before, so we don't know, are they the same as they were in the previous shows or not. So a massive big take is actually working on their protective skills, and we're not talking about mild protective or just strongly cautious. We're talking about super, like Kaioken times 20 transformed to Super Vegito protective, because, you know, that's their daughter and they're really protective. And they don't really like her with Shaggy, because in this film, as we already talked about, Shaggy is dating Fawn, and you see where the main plot is. So instead of Shaggy dating Velma or having a fling with Googie, instead we go on the love romance between Shaggy and Fawn, which is something new and unique, because it's something that so many people on the fan websites wanted to see, and seeing that brought together into this fan film is definitely there for our fans, just to admire those two together. And to see that the parents don't like Shaggy, you're probably thinking, why don't I like Shaggy? Like, he's the harmless person. Agreed, he is. Shaggy is harmless. There's nothing wrong with Shaggy as a whole, but it's who he hangs out with. As Shaggy is part of the Mystery Inc. gang, or the Mystery Five in this film portrays him as, could be pretty sinister to know that they're going to be in a lot of trouble, hunting monsters, ghouls and ghosts, and going after myths and legends. If you have a daughter, you don't want them in that type of environment. So I can see why the parents don't like Shaggy. So it's kind of those Romeo and Juliet vibes where none of them approve of it, but it's going to happen any other way, minus the death. And while speaking on Shaggy, we also have Shaggy's parents. They're also making an involvement in this film. Now, it's not going to be a major involvement, but they're going to be there. They're going to be in the supportive roles, and we saw them in Mystery Incorporated from a different perspective as we would normally see them, because if we saw the Mystery Inc. shows in the past with Where Are You, when we see Shaggy's family tree and history, especially with the movie formats, Shaggy has one of those weird families that always keeps changing, and it's really hard to distinguish where he gets his morals from and his appearance from. In the Mystery Incorporated one, you would never really guess those were Shaggy's parents. In the film, this fan film, is totally changed up. Okay, yeah, we don't get a lot of screen time with the parents, but there's a lot more different controlled environment as we would have expected from Mystery Incorporated. So while they incorporate the same sort of elements, we're seeing a completely different vibe from them. And that's not all. There's also another member of the Shaggy family making an appearance, and it is Shaggy's little sister, nicknamed Shuggy. Now you're probably scratching your head, it's like, Shaggy had a sister? When was this brought about? Well, if you remember in the Pup Named Scooby-Doo series, Shaggy's sister was actually put in there, but under a different name. The Shuggy is a nickname given to her at birth as a baby, but her name is actually, as I've got it written down as a long one, Margaret Maggie Rogers. Yeah, it's quite a long one, and a lot of people always forget that Shaggy had a sister because she doesn't really come up a lot, especially in Mystery Incorporated, where she wasn't really mentioned at all. So it's one of those elements, like, you have to really understand which universe and parallel world you're basing it on. So seeing that they brought Shuggy back is really nice, because Shuggy and Googie is kind of like a reference to Shaggy's girlfriend in some sort of weird way. Now, moving away from the Rogers family, we're going to head over to Fred Jones's family, and then now we know about the parents as they made many appearances in previous incarnations of Scooby-Doo. We know that they're going to make an appearance in the show, but they're not the main focus points we want to talk about real quick. We just want to focus on Fred's sister, Donna. Yeah, that's right, Donna Jones is in this movie, and you're probably thinking, was Donna Jones an actual character in any of the Scooby-Doo reincarnations? No. Donna Jones is actually a character made specifically for this movie. That is right. It is a unique character only made for this universe and this universe alone. And I think that's really nice how they're adding their own characters, their own unique, part into this film. Gives it more life, gives it more adventure, gives it more animosity. Like, you need that. You need your own little traits. And giving Fred a sister will definitely change that character as a whole. As we've seen Fred develop in many reincarnations, we've seen him as a strong leader to a dictator to a control freak. We've seen him at his worst, we've seen him at his best, but we have never seen him as a protective big brother before. So that is a very nice touch, seeing that thrown in there to surprise us diehard fans of that connection. So I think that's about it. We've been over the plot, we've been over the story, we've been where the arc takes place, we've gone over the characters, or some of the characters at least, and we've gone over the villains for this film. And I'll try to keep this review different from my other ones, because as this is a fan film, it's very hard to base it on because there's no other elements like it. This is the first proper Scooby-Doo fan film we've ever got. We had Scooby-Doo comics, we had like fan like segments and that, but we've never actually seen anyone create their own Scooby-Doo film. So this is the first one ever, so we have no idea any other stuff to compare it to, and there's no other material like it. This is the first, and I think it's really great. It just shows how much a show has evolved over the years, that the fact that someone's creativity has brought a new life to Scooby-Doo and evolved into the universe of the Scoob-verse. It's like endless possibilities, and I think that this film's going to encourage many more people to get down writing and create their own like shorts or movies or episodes, or at least, and I feel like this could be a game changer for Scooby-Doo fans and as the actual whole company itself, because Scooby-Doo is such a massive show, over 50 years of entertaining kids, adults. Most of our childhood has been around this character, this show, and seeing it now is astonishing. I gave it like a 7 out of 10. You got to really understand, like, you've seen Scooby-Doo shows, you've seen all the others, seen a fan show, you don't want to give it too much of big appraisals, you want to at least give room to at least change or improve on. So a 7 out of 10 is still a reasonably good margin. It had a good story. I love the elements of taking elements from the show, the episode, and then creating it as a baseline for the entire opening act. I feel like that is a very good game changer, which could be implemented in other Scooby-Doo shows like it. Like you can actually draw inspiration from this, taking an old episode but also giving it the backstory that it deserves and the opening scene to the massive act. Like, they really worked on this one, and I think that this is part of an ongoing trilogy set. Like, there's still the Waters of Atlantis coming soon, so that will be the next sequel to this fan film. Can you believe it? There's going to be another one, another massive long Scooby-Doo fan film, and the animation style is very unique. It's a 2D environment, which some people may not like, but I quite like the creativity in it, because you can still get the nice humour and nice emotions from the cast. Yeah, okay, some of the audios may be different, but when you're working on a budget, you get what you have, and I still love it. If this ever comes out on DVD or able to purchase for collectors, I would definitely love to purchase a copy just to add to my collection, because, you know, as a Scooby-Doo buff, I really want to work on those type of elements. So yeah, definitely credit where due. It is a film worth watching, and there's so many different versions. There's the director's cut, there's the uncut version, like there's ones for YouTube and one that isn't. So there's two different versions, what I like to call the YouTube cut and the director's cut, but there's also a black and white special edition one. So any old films that are in black and white, they're like my go-to geek out moments, because I just love it. I find that that's where the best horror is when you got a black and white, because it sets the mood and the setting. And as this film is basically mostly about murder and death, it's one of the goriest Scooby-Doo films I've ever seen. I thought dark humour in the old Scooby-Doo shows, like that dark side, could never be topped. This has been topped, and it's only going to get better in Waters of Atlantis. So definitely highly recommend it, and I cannot wait for the sequel. But yes, I hope you guys have enjoyed this review on a Scooby-Doo fan film. Let me know in your comments below what you thought of the film. Check out the website and links in the description. Support the creator over on his YouTube channel and Facebook page, and I will see you in the next awesome honest review. But until then, take care.